It's a red, white, support the blue flashback weekend. Flashing back to our favorite interviews with those that have put their lives on the line for their fellow citizens.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
Jim Rathman with us. He's former Secret Service investigative consultant. Jim, welcome. Let's talk a little bit about the Gabby Petito case, the letter from Bryan that was supposedly found on his body in a swamp that was extremely wet, and the notebook was in really dry conditions. Not weird at all. But let's talk about the content of that letter, some of the reasoning and justification that was made, it seems, by Bryan for killing Gabby, and also the involvement of Bryan's parents, or lack thereof, or a lot of, depending on how it's looked at and what reality turns out to be.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those very interesting cases, as we all know. You know, you have reports of domestic violence with that, and you had law enforcement that was called that, judge, we've all seen through the body camera videos and things such as that. But, you know, when they found the notebook or his diary where he was making his notes, he talks about the reasons why he killed Gabby. And, you know, she had some sort of injury. She was in a lot of pain. He said he took her pain away. But I don't buy that. I think it was a domestic violence case that got out of control. He ended up killing her, didn't know what to do. But what's interesting is that he actually left their location where they were out west in the United States, and he came back to Florida. On his time in Florida, he cleared out an entire storage facility and then ended up going back out west again before returning back to Florida another time. I find it to be very odd that, you know, you have all the flooding or where his body was found. He's submerged in water, you know, for couple of weeks, and yet there's notebook is pretty much completely dry, and the parents walk right to where it is, or lead law enforcement right to where he's at, just miraculously. I don't buy that story whatsoever. I do believe that they had knowledge of what is going on. I think when he went back the first time before he cleared out the storage facility, he let them in on what was going on, and they've tried to help him at that point. So I think there's a lot to be uncovered, and I think Gabby Petito's family, when I believe they filed a civil suit,
yes,
and that they're going to do some discovery where they're going to be able to subpoena some records, whether it's phone records, emails, various communications. And I do think in time we're going to know the level of involvement that the parents had with, or knowledge they've had. Now, of course, they're innocent until it's proven otherwise. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they were found civilly liable in some sort of way, and they could potentially face criminal charges if they diverted that investigation on purpose.
A lot of times we see cases go from either being criminally liable or that being dismissed and then going and civilly liable. A good example of that would be the O.J. Simpson case, for those of us who are old enough to remember that. How often is it that it works in the opposite direction, where it starts civil and then discovery ends up finding evidence of actual criminal behavior?
It definitely happens. I mean, because that evidence can be used. So, you know, that's what the discovery process is for in the civil suit. And I mean, it's happened before where it could go from civil into criminal. I don't think it's as common. Usually it's the other way around, where you found criminal liable and then it turns into civil. In this particular case, obviously the criminal aspect of it with Bryan being deceased kind of takes that out. But what was the family's knowledge? What did they know? And I think Gabby Petito's family knows darn well that they had a lot of knowledge, or they helped in their own way, and they're going to ensure that information gets out for their pending case.
Sometimes when a crime is committed, the actions, the cover-up, ends up being far more damaging than the actual crime. Is this a case where you see that being what's ended up happening here? The parents really had nothing to do with the initial crime itself. It's something that was between Gabby and Bryan. But then if they allegedly did have knowledge and did participate in trying to essentially help their son, and some would make the argument of these people have been through enough already. Yes, they made bad choices, or allegedly made bad choices in covering it up. Let's not keep putting them through hell. Should they be held accountable? Should they be, put through hell for the actions that they chose and the decisions that they may have allegedly made to help cover up a crime like this?
Right. And that's such a great question. I guess it's really tough to say until you're really in that position because, you do anything you can for your loved ones. However, if you know that your son was involved in a murder or killed somebody and was saying it was an accident, then I think it's your obligation as a parent to help them with getting the help needed for them, but taking them to law enforcement and getting them to explain that this was an accident. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I understand I'm in the wrong. But you have an obligation as a human being and human decency, I can tell you that if I had a child that had done something like that and came home to me, we're going to have to go talk to law enforcement. I mean, you did it. You can't get around it. It can only get worse from here. So you might as well stop that and let's get, to where Gabby's body's at. Let's tell your story about what happened. Maybe, you get a manslaughter charge and you're out in 10 to 15 years instead of a murder charge. Who knows? But you can't just go unreported. You can't sit there and try to continue to cover it up. With today's technology and investigative tools, you're never going to get away with it anymore. So you might as well do the right thing and stop the situation where it is and start correcting it the best way you can, whether it's your child or not. It's as difficult as it is. That's truly the best option because now, where their son could be alive had they done that, if that's the case, of course, he could have gotten a manslaughter charge because there really wouldn't have been any other way to prove otherwise, right? Mm-hmm. So, he's got an opportunity to still have a life. It's going to be difficult for some years, but at least he has an opportunity to still, have a relationship with your son. But now their son's deceased, Gabby's deceased, her family doesn't know what's going on. And now if you had spent all this time covering it up, now you're looking at civil penalties, you could possibly be looking at criminal, and now you're in trouble yourself. So it didn't get any better. It needs to just stop right there, report it to law enforcement, tell your side of the story, and let things sort itself out.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
Jim Rathman, former Secret Service investigative consultant, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight. Always a pleasure having you on the air. My name is Tony Brueski. If you want to weigh in on any of the cases that we are following for you, you can do so. We got a phone number you can call 24/7. It's 888-554-5537. More commonly recognized as 888-5-KILLER. It's 888-5-KILLER. Love to hear your insight and your voice on anything that we're discussing right here. We may use it on a future episode as well. My name is Tony Brueski. Stay with us.